Isn't it?
All right, we are live.
We are live. Welcome, everyone, to our MBC webinar series. And I am so excited for today's session because we are going to introduce you to our MBC Leadership Team. This is an excellent opportunity for you to get to know us as an organization, who our incredible MBC leaders are, and they really are my sounding board and my go-to for coming up with the amazing programs and services and content to help best support those living with a metastatic diagnosis. It is chaired by our board member and dear friend, Abigail Johnston. And we have amazing women here tonight who are going to share more about their self, their diagnosis, and I think what we are looking forward to in terms of what's coming down the pike in 2024. So, Abigail, I'll punt things over to you as our amazing host tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. And this is also one of my favorite times where we get to talk about the people who are putting in the hard work behind the scenes. You all get to see my face every other Wednesday and get to talk about so many things that survivingbreastcancer.org is doing, but so much of the heavy lifting that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that we are serving our community in the best way we possibly can. That happens with all of these wonderful ladies. So we are missing one person tonight. And so just want to shout out Kathleen Friel, who has been on this series before. She is a trusted and valued member of our committee. MBC means that sometimes we have to deal with yucky side effects, and she's not feeling well tonight. So Kathleen, we send you our best. We hope you feel much better soon, and we'll include, as we go around our virtual room, we'll include some information about Kathleen. So survivingbreastcancer.org is an organization that serves people from diagnosis and beyond, right? Part of that beyond is people who are diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. And I am so thankful to survivingbreastcancer.org that when we talk about how the metastatic breast cancer experience is different, when we talk about how patients have different experiences, they really listen. And that's not always the case with every organization. So just also want to begin by thanking Laura and of course William for really listening to the facts that we share with them, to our experiences that we share with them. And always, as I sometimes say, always say yes when I have a crazy idea. So what we're going to do tonight is we are going to let you learn a little bit about each of the amazing women who are on this committee, their cancer experiences, and then what they are looking forward to or what they are working on specifically as part of the MBC leadership team. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview as far as what our leadership team does. It is our responsibility to advise survivingbreastcancer.org on what things can be done to support the metastatic breast cancer community. And as part of that, we create materials, we help to review and update the website so that our website has great and reliable information for metastatic breast cancer patients. Laura included the link that was scrolling across the screen just a moment ago, but if you go to survivingbreastcancer.org, some of the drop-down menus will have information specific to a variety of groups of people, including caregivers, but also specifically delineating the differences between early stage breast cancer and metastatic breast cancer. So we definitely suggest you check that out. And then in addition to this particular webinar series, there are a variety of other support pieces in place for metastatic patients, including twice a month specific breakout rooms during the Thursday Night Thrivers support group. We have a WhatsApp, very, very active WhatsApp channel for the metastatic patients. And then legitimately whatever else we dream up, which part of that is what we'll talk about soon about what Kathleen is working on. But at the end of the day, everything that we do together as the leadership committee and also with survivingbreastcancer.org is focused on you all and what we can do to better serve the larger breast cancer community, but also the specific metastatic breast cancer community. So I want to just say to anybody who's listening, we are always open to ideas. We are always open to suggestions. We are always open to you letting us know if we're not doing something that you want us to be doing, or you want us to do more of something or less. So whatever it is, we're always open to hearing that. So we will begin going around our virtual room here for each of the amazing people on our committee to tell their cancer experience story. And Katie, because you are next to me in our Brady Bunch squares, if you would like to kick us off and share about your diagnosis and where you are now and however much you want to share about the clinical trials that you've participated in, that would be great.
Thanks, Abigail. So I am Katie Jewell, and I live in Nebraska in the central part of the United States. I was diagnosed with de novo metastatic disease in February of 2018. So in a couple of weeks, I will celebrate 6 years of living with MBC. Triple positive. Initially, my mets were throughout my skeletal lymphatic system and in my liver. So I did traditional first-line treatment with Taxotere and Herceptin and Perjeta, and added letrozole to that. Did some things, had an oophorectomy, so I didn't have to do the Zolidec shots anymore, and was actually initially then after that enrolled in a clinical trial that is due to report hopefully here soon, that was testing Ibrance in the triple positive community. I was in, however, the control arm. So it was an open study. I was in the control arm, so I just received standard of care, Herceptin, Perjeta, and letrozole. Had a success with that for a number of years, and then started having some minor progressions. So I've been through a couple of different options. Tried a little bit of an out-of-the-box option with for my second line. And then when that didn't perform as we hoped, enrolled in another clinical trial last May, in May of 2023. And this trial is a phase 2 trial looking at the combination of Enhertu and tucatinib in the HER2 positive population. So I've had the opportunity to be involved in a couple of clinical trials early on, which is, I think, important for the community to know that there are often trials available that give us access to treatments that we would not have access to, sometimes really cutting edge stuff and I think that are not last resort kind of options for us. So it's a little bit about my story. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to, besides serving in any way that I can on this team, is I'm hoping to be involved a little bit more with this webinar series and helping with with this and the presentations that we'll do throughout the year.
Thank you, Katie. And Katie is one of those superstars who is not only dealing with a significant cancer diagnosis, but also still works full time. So if you already shared that and I missed it, my apologies.
I meant to say that and forgot.
Yes, which not everybody can do what Katie is able to juggle and handle. So we're really appreciative of all that you do, Katie. Sheila, would you like to share your story next?
Of course. My name is Sheila Gaudreau. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, but live currently in Bradenton, Florida. I married. I have 2 young adults that are one out of the house, the other one in college. I was diagnosed de novo with metastatic breast cancer back in July of 2015. I am still in my first line of treatment. I am ER/PR positive, HER2 negative. I'm one of those unicorns for which the Ibrance and letrozole combo appears to just work with fairly minimal side effects. I also work full time. My meds were originally to the liver and nodes under my right arm. I have been without any evidence of active disease for about a little over 7 years now. And I actually just had my scans last month, and everything is still looking good. thankfully. So that is all about me. Oh, the only surgery I've had. So I did not go through any surgeries because at the time, obviously, as soon as I had decided to go just do mastectomy in both, even though there was a tumor only in one, but of course, through the course of all the tests and things, we discovered that it was had already spread. So for me, a mastectomy wasn't really an option. So the only surgery I've gone through is actually to throw me into menopause. They removed my ovaries and tubes so that I could begin with the Ibrance and letrozole combo. So that has been only surgery that I've had in this process so far.
Thank you, Sheila. So both Katie and Sheila are unicorns, and the way that we use that definition in the context of metastatic breast cancer, it's really those people who have lived longer than 5 years with MBC. But then Sheila's situation is she's even more of a unicorn. I don't know if you're a unicorn squared or whatever we want to call that. A sparkly unicorn.
I like that.
Still being on that first line of treatment, which that is not everybody's experience, and I know Sheila's very, very grateful for that. Sheila, I want to tell you that the application for the Living Beyond Breast Cancer conference was shared everywhere. I don't know if it just went live today or whatever, and man, there's a picture of you and your daughter front and center. So just showing how various people in this virtual room are wearing different hats for various organizations. And many of us are also volunteers with Living Beyond Breast Cancer. Sheila, do you want to talk a little bit about that conference and what that meant for you and your daughter to be able to do that?
Of course. So I've done a lot of advocacy with various organizations. LBBC is really special. Living Beyond Breast Cancer, I actually got connected to it because they have an advocate program for just metastatic breast cancer patients called Hear My Voice. I completed that program, I believe, a couple of years ago. And at the time, again, middle of COVID, it was all virtual. But at the end, we actually had the opportunity to attend their conference. It was the first in-person conference since COVID. They hold it in Philadelphia. And my daughter, who's in college, was able to go over and spend time with me that weekend. She had yet to meet any of my MBC Thriver friends. And she arrived at the hotel before I did. So she arrives and she has people greeting her because I plaster her picture all social media. I also do with the rest of my family. But she has complete strangers going on to her. Are you Sheila's daughter? And so she got to meet a lot of people before she arrived. She was not supposed to volunteer, but they needed help, so they volunteered there. She got to see me also as a panelist. I shared my story along with, I believe, 3 or 4 other ladies. And in addition to that, I also had a reading part in a play called For Our Lives, a compilation of interviews with metastatic breast cancer patients. And throughout that whole experience, she was able to finally realize why I do what I do in the space of advocacy on top of everything else. And she totally got it. I mean, in tears. She's like, I see why you're doing this. And she really wants to keep getting more involved. So if she can, she'll go to that conference, etc. That conference was really special because it's not a scientific thing. It's mostly you get to meet other people and sometimes, caregivers. And it's more getting to know the person, but also learning a little bit more about things you can do as you walk through your journey. And it was just a very special moment for me to share with my daughter. And actually, when I saw that picture, I sent it to her the other day, and she's like, do you recognize anyone in the top right corner of that page? And she's like, I love that picture. They actually did a photo shoot. You could take pictures either on your own, and we have the pictures they took. There's so many, you get to pick 10 at no cost. And we had challenges picking the 10 because they were all just so cute. But yeah, it was very, very, very special moment.
Good. I'm glad. Yes, there was a picture of Melanie, Amy, and another not metastatic person, Rajan, who came to help support us with the play that was circulating quite a bit. I would open things and be like, oh, there's our faces. So that's always fun. Thank you, Sheila, for sharing, and thanks for being here. We're very excited. Certainly, some of you may have noticed that in the last couple of years, survivingbreastcancer.org has made a gigantic effort to translate all of our many resources into Spanish. And so we're super excited for Sheila and Claudia to be on our MBC Leadership Team to continue allowing us to translate resources into people's heart languages. It's so important to meet people where they are when they're going through such a serious experience like a cancer diagnosis. And we are really committed to doing as much as we possibly can to ensure that people can access good resources. So Claudia, you are next, my friend, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Claudia Gonzalez, and I live in Orlando, Florida, just like Sheila in sunny Florida. Although it's pretty cold right now, but cold for us, I guess. Yes, I was diagnosed in 2018, March of 2018, with metastatic breast cancer. And I went through the treatments, and which included chemotherapy and oral oral chemo as well. Also, the mastectomy to my right breast was done at the end of 2018, and I have radiation through to my spine, which because my metastasis was in the bones of my spine, and I actually did pretty well with all the treatment and all that. I just want to mention also with the triple negative is a very aggressive cancer. So I was treated really aggressively as well. I am was really pleased with my medical team and how quickly everything came about from my diagnosis to the treatment that I went through. I was actually no evidence of cancer cells for about 2.5 years. And then in June of 2021, I was diagnosed again, triple negative, stage 3. A lump was found on my left breast this time. And at that point, I went also through chemotherapy and no radiation that time, thank God. And what else did I have? Oh, and then I had the mastectomy. And after, like at the end of 2021, my oncologist decided to do a genomic testing on my lump, and luckily that that was done, and a PDL1 mutation was found in my lump, and I started with immunotherapy. I did immunotherapy for a year, and the end of this month, it would be a year since I finished my immunotherapy. So yes, I'm not in treatment right now, and I pray that I will keep this way. Um, I do have scans regularly, and my scans are actually coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm anxious, like everyone else. That before all the scans is, we get a scan anxiety. So I'm really anxious about the results. But we'll see what happens. So hoping not to getting, not to that nothing is wrong, that everything keeps going as it is right now, and that I'll continue as no evidence. I'm very excited to be part of the group of surviving breast cancer. Right now, I'm in the path of getting trained as a Latino research advocate, and I'm extremely excited about that, and hoping to share as much information as I can with everybody.
Thank you, Claudia. Yes, Barbara Segura, who is a professor in Puerto Rico, got a wonderful grant, and this is the first class of Latina advocates who are getting trained. And so we'll be having a webinar sometime this year about that particular initiative. And I'm sure Claudia will be sharing a little bit more about that. I'm getting a little feedback, Claudia. Are you able to mute yourself? There we go. Anyway, sometimes the StreamYard is quite an interesting platform. So we're very excited to have that information to be able to share, because not only are people of Latin descent very much underrepresented in clinical trials, there are very few advocates who come from a background where they're speaking Spanish, where there are cultural differences and things like that. And everybody misses out when we are not including the people who are going to be affected by clinical trials. So we're really excited for the results of that particular training program. So we'll be hearing more from Claudia and hopefully Barbara on what they were planning to do with that and all of that. So stay tuned for more information. All right, Melanie, we are over to you, my friend. The squares kind of got discombobulated, but I think you were next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melanie Sisk, and I'll try to make this short, but I was first diagnosed with early stage breast cancer, stage 1A, back in 2016 at the age of 43. And my mother had breast cancer like 20 years prior. So the first thing we did was genetic testing, right, to see if we had a breast cancer gene in the family. So because I was presented with mastectomy versus lumpectomy and radiation, and there was no overall survival benefit between either one. So my thought process was, if we have the gene, I'll do the mastectomy because, I had a family, kids working, and the genetic test came back negative. So that told we didn't have a gene in the family. So I just went ahead and did the lumpectomy and radiation, and they took out 2 lymph nodes, and the lymph nodes were clear, margins were good. I did the OncoDX score, that was a 13. So that meant no chemotherapy for me. I had a less than 5% chance of reoccurrence. And I did like I said, the surgery, the radiation, continued working the whole time. And then I was put on tamoxifen, and I was told you take it for 10 years, and they move you over to the survivorship clinic at your hospital, and you're just getting your 6-month checkups and yearlies. And then I noticed 4 years later, a little bit earlier, but I noticed I started having some back pain. And I was a nurse. I guess I still am a nurse, but I was working with patients and moving heavy patients and heavy equipment. So I just chalked it up to, oh, I've got a bulging disc, So I self-medicated and thinking that's what it was the whole time, because, cancer reoccurrence for me wasn't on my radar because I didn't know it was such a high percentage of early stagers that turned metastatic. I've learned now it's between 20 and 30% of all early stage cancers turn to metastatic disease. So I was just told less than 5%, go live your life. So even being a nurse, I was never told that. So it wasn't on my radar. Had it been on my radar, I would have seeked out medical treatment for my back pain sooner. Would that have changed the outcome? No, but I could have gotten treatment sooner, but it is what it is. So having the back pain, my PCP sent me for an MRI. It showed that I had metastatic disease. So we did the PET scan, all the tests, and it was metastatic cancer, and it was bone only. So it was in several areas in my skeleton. So we immediately, I was 47 at the time. It was 4 years later. So put me in menopause. So I had Zoladex injections. They started me on CDK4/6 inhibitor, Ibrance, and Foslodex. So I did that. And then I finally got comfortable enough. And also, we did 10 radiation treatments to my sacrum because that was the area that was causing a lot of pain because it was pressing on the nerve. So that really helped with the pain. Did that, started the treatment, eventually decided, okay, I want to get rid of Zoladex. So let's do I'd already done a hysterectomy, but we kept my ovaries. So we did the oophorectomy, took my ovaries out. So that got rid of that treatment. It was going along happy. And then I had a tonsil that lit up chronically on a PET scan. So what do? You're 47 years old. Could it be throat cancer? Yeah, because I'm at the age for that, right? Or it could be breast cancer. Breast cancer doesn't typically go to the tonsils, but there are documented cases. So the only way to know for sure was do a tonsillectomy. So at 47 years old, I had to have a tonsillectomy. We just took the one tonsil out because the main complication is hemorrhaging. So he's like, I don't want to take them both because that's going to double your chance for hemorrhaging. And so let's just take the one that's lighting up. So we took it out. Everything was fine. It was not cancer. However, I will say personally, I would rather have 20 bone biopsies where they drill down in your back into your sacrum to take out bone than to go through a tonsillectomy ever again as an adult. That was awful. That's the worst thing by far I have had done. So anyway, but thankful it wasn't cancer. It wasn't anything like that. So I'm doing good. It's been 3.5 years. I'm still on my first line of treatment, which is a CDK4/6 inhibitor, Ibrance and Foslodex. I'm stable. I have scans. We pushed it out to every 4 months now. It was every 3, but as I've got stable, we're pushing it to 4. I have scans coming up later this month. And like everyone else, it's skin anxiety. And I really honestly feel like it gets worse because I know in my mind, the average efficacy of a CDK4/6 inhibitor is 24 months, right? And here I am 3.5 years. So it's like you're just waiting for that shoe to drop. And I hate to be like that, but you can't help it. But anyway, I'm very fortunate and very thankful that I'm still on my first line of treatment. I always try to stay ahead of the game. I always talk to my doctor like, okay, when progression does come, what do we do next? So we already have a plan in place. That may change. We have a plan now, but in 4 months, I'm probably going to ask her again, hey, what are we going to do now? Because, everything's changing. So I'm very excited to be on the MBC Leadership Team at Surviving Breast Cancer. I'm actually the host of the Facebook group for this month. So trying to get to know people there. And I'm fairly new to the community as far as the Thursday Night Thrivers and things like that. So I just really love advocacy work. Since I couldn't do nursing anymore, it was I tried to go back to that and just couldn't do it. It was physically too much. So I just kind of dove into advocacy work. And honestly, it helps me. It kind of helps give purpose to my own suffering and a reason to get out of bed every day, other than my family. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, Melanie. That was great to hear all of those things. You forget people's stories until they share them again, because there's so many people with so many different stories. Amy, would you like to share next?
Hi, I'm Amy Parliament. I live in New York. The accent is from the Bronx. Just kidding. I'm originally from Georgia. So my story began in 2014. I do diagnostic imaging. So I kept feeling an area in my breast and it was very tender. And they're like, it's nothing. It's nothing. I was 39 at the time. I'd had several mammograms before. I had very dense breasts. I never had any children. So the density in my breast was very hard to see through. And back in 2014, they really weren't doing 3D mammograms. So I kept pushing, and I was in the process of relocating from downstate New York to upstate New York. And I kept saying to a coworker, I feel like something's not right. I wish somebody would look. So eventually I came home, went to the doctor in the middle of the transition. And when I walked in, the physician made a face, and in being in medicine, you kind of are reading the crowd in the room. He's like, I need you to go across the hallway and get a mammogram. And when I got to the mammogram, they did the original pictures. And for the first time, it was like the 5th mammogram I'd had. They pulled out the paddles with the grids and the numbers. And so I began to sob, and I'm like, you see something. and I ended up having cancer on the bottom fold of my right breast. And by the time I got home and took a look at it, because I don't stand in front of the mirror and like dance naked or whatever, and I kept feeling, and they kept telling me it was a suspensory ligament in the breast. That's what I was feeling, and cancer didn't hurt. I had a fullness in my underarm as well. I had the mammogram before I could even get from the Women's Imaging Center to the car. They were calling to tell me I needed a biopsy, had a biopsy within a couple of days. And I'm one of the lucky ones. January 29th of 2014, I was diagnosed early stage breast cancer. We thought if I was aggressive at that age and did a bilateral mastectomy, I wouldn't need chemo or radiation. I woke up from the mastectomies, not able to lift my arms. So I knew at that point I had signed consent for them to take my nodes if they were discovered in the OR, and they were. And so I had my mastectomy on February the 25th. My 40th birthday would have been the 28th. And all I wanted to do was get out of the hospital. So on the evening of the 27th, the surgeon came in and asked for me to sit down. And what they told me is I ended up having cancer in both breasts and in 23 out of 26 lymph nodes on the right side, which means now I've progressed. I'm no longer early stage. I'll need chemo and radiation. So right out of the gate, I was diagnosed 3C. I have lobular breast cancer that is hormone receptor positive. Been told by countless medical professionals that they think I have some kind of genetic mutation. So far, I've had a variety of genetic testing. Nothing shows up. So maybe at some point it will, maybe it won't. 5 years to the day, I was going to have some scans, mentioned to the doctor that I was having some back pain. I grew up with scoliosis as a child, so I thought the back pain was from the scoliosis, but the doctor's like, let's just give it a quick look-see. And I was going back for the 5-year checkup thinking that they were going to remove my port, because I kept my port for the first 5 years. And the scans came back and showed that there was a lesion on my spine. So then we biopsied it, and it was metastatic breast cancer. So I'm bone only. I was diagnosed 5 years to the day of my early stage diagnosis, metastatic. Again, it had lobular properties in the bone. I am one of the fortunate ones, and I realize that. But as each month, every time I count up, I also know I'm counting closer to the next treatment. I will start my 66th cycle of Ibrance and Faslodex this Friday. And I just celebrated my 5th year with MBC and my 10th year with breast cancer. So I do feel fortunate. It has afforded me a community of people that I didn't know. And working in healthcare, I always thought, okay, if you go have a mastectomy, you won't need all these extra things and that the cancer won't come back. But as I learned, depending on the type of cancer you have, things change. With my lobular cancer, and even though I do imaging, I'll tell you it's very hard to see and detect. So it's not always detectable on imaging. So I feel like that's why I had the stage I did at diagnosis, because we were unable to see it in 2014. And I just feel fortunate that we caught it early in 2019. So my only thing that I would say to you, if you're listening, is please make sure you know your body. You know when something feels right or don't. Be your own advocate. If you know something is not right, it doesn't matter what age you are, keep going back to your healthcare professional, because I feel like I saved my own life back then, because who would have known if I had not kept insisting for them to check me, even though the imaging wasn't matching or the diagnosis, and they told me you couldn't have pain with the cancer. For SBC, I've done different podcasts for them. I currently help moderate their Thursday Night Thriver group on the first and third Thursday of the month. On the first Thursday, we do a group. On the third Thursday, we have, is she a counselor? Is that right? We have a counselor now, or a social worker that comes in and moderates for us. If you're living with MBC, we encourage you to join our Thursday night group and make some friendships and make some bonds out there. I also was a Hear My Voice advocate in the class with Sheila in 2022, and I've served on several different advocacy. You can pick how active you want to be or how inactive, but truly advocate for yourself. One of my most favorite things that I've done thus far is I've served on the DOD as a grant reviewer. There it's looking at different research. So there's so many different options out there. Just make sure when you're using a resource that it's something that's credible.
Thank you, Amy. And we're looking forward to having Amy do her scans presentation coming up in March, where she goes through each of the different scans that you might get as somebody living with metastatic breast cancer. She shows you pictures of the machines and talks about the prep, what the doctors are looking for, what shows up, and how it shows up on the various images. So I don't think we have a specific date for that yet, but be watching at survivingbreastcancer.org/events for Amy to come and talk about that. She also, so as she was talking about lobular breast cancer, and each of our other members of the committee are living with invasive ductal carcinoma. So invasive lobular carcinoma is what Amy was diagnosed with. There's also another subtype, inflammatory breast cancer, and survivingbreastcancer.org actually has a separate support group specifically for people living with inflammatory breast cancer, because these other subtypes, they happen less frequently. And so it's a lot harder for people to find each other sometimes when they have a diagnosis that just doesn't, there aren't as many people with that diagnosis. So if you are living with inflammatory breast cancer, you can also look out for that support group. And that is in partnership with the Inflammatory Breast Cancer Foundation, and of course, Ginny Mason, who everybody knows and loves. She has been an advocate for a very long time, and we really appreciate that partnership. So one of the people that's missing tonight is Kathleen Friel. I mentioned her at the beginning of our discussion tonight, and she has been serving on our leadership committee for several years. She was born with cerebral palsy and is an actual, I thought she was a neuroscientist, but actually she has a PhD in neurophysiology. I learn new things all the time. And she leads a research laboratory at the Burke Neurological Institute in White Plains, New York. Kathleen has been living with cerebral palsy since she was born, but then was also diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer in 2018. Similar to several of the people on our panel, she is continuing to work full time and running this multi-million-dollar laboratory. She is incredibly gifted and celebrated, but she has also been on a CDK4/6 inhibitor. Several people talked about this particular class of drugs. There are three: Ibrance, Kisqali, and Verzenio. So she's been on a various CDK4/6 inhibitor in addition to an aromatase inhibitor, letrozole, since 2018. And she is unable to be with us tonight because MBC is not a fun disease to have. And of course, the medication provides side effects that are sometimes very, very difficult to deal with. But one of the initiatives that Kathleen is spearheading is a collection of information about the people who participate with survivingbreastcancer.org, their information in terms of contact information, their birthdays, things like that, so that we can celebrate with them. But she's also working on collecting emergency contacts, because when you live with metastatic breast cancer, sometimes you don't feel well enough to get on a support group or to participate in events like this. And so knowing that we have that contact information so that we're able to check on the people that we're missing and make sure that we are able to support them in the best way possible, that was one of Kathleen's ideas. So that will be something that we're going to be rolling out for our community, and is absolutely one of those initiatives that, if there are other people who want to participate, is something that somebody else could help with as well. So I will share a little bit about my story. My name is Abigail Johnston, as Laura introduced me at the beginning, and I've been involved with survivingbreastcancer.org. Well, according to LinkedIn, it's been more than 5 years. So I got involved with them relatively early on, before COVID, when they would still actually go in person to places and have in-person events. And so I've been privileged to serve on the board as well as chair this MBC Leadership Committee for the last several years since we dreamed it up, which is basically the way everything happens. And now we have some subcommittees, and so we're definitely growing. But I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, invasive ductal carcinoma, back in 2017. That diagnosis was what we call de novo, Latin that means from the beginning. So I never had an early stage diagnosis. I was metastatic from the beginning. I was 38 and got my first mammogram in coming to my doctor and saying there's this lump, and I had not been screened previously. I was breastfeeding my 2 boys at the time. And I am very thankful that no medical provider said to me, "You're too young for breast cancer," because there are some people who are diagnosed prior to 40 who struggled to get scans because medical professionals often forget that when there is a germline or genetic mutation, which we have, that you can sometimes get breast cancer prior to the general time when you're more likely to get breast cancer. And so I was misdiagnosed for a couple of months. We thought I was stage 2 for a bit, and then due to a medical mistake, discovered that I had actually been stage 4 from the beginning. So it was a very traumatic entry into this experience of metastatic breast cancer. I learned a lot in that experience. So I had a lumpectomy and started traditional chemotherapy, adriamycin and Cytoxan. Sometimes adriamycin is sometimes called the red devil, and it deserves that name, let me tell you that. So I began kind of that traditional early stage treatment until in the middle of that, we discovered I had been metastatic from the beginning. So I am presently on my 6th line of treatment, which is a clinical trial specific to immunotherapy. You heard Claudia a little bit earlier talk about the PD-L1 somatic mutation. Somatic meaning not in your DNA, something that the cancer acquired. And that particular mutation can indicate that someone is going to benefit from immunotherapy. And so that is part of the reason that I am in an immunotherapy trial. It's basically a vaccine. And so we are hoping that it works the way it's designed to, because the idea would be that once the trial is done, I would be able to not have to be on ongoing treatment. So metastatic breast cancer, for people who don't realize this, is something where you have to take medication to keep it in check, unless you are someone like Claudia, who has responded extremely well and is able to not be on ongoing medication. Otherwise, you have to be on medication until it no longer works for you. So the idea potentially that we could have treatment that would mean we don't have to be on medication forever is pretty compelling. And I wanted Katie to talk about clinical trials, and I wanted to talk about my clinical trial as well, because every medication that everybody on this panel has talked about, the only way that we have access to that medication is because there was a clinical trial, and then it was approved by the FDA to be able to be given to people in the United States. There are processes in other countries as well. And so we at survivingbreastcancer.org absolutely support the process of clinical trials. In fact, we have a whole page on our website dedicated to those organizations, those pharmaceutical companies who have partnered with us to share information about their clinical trials. Sad fact of the matter is, only about 3 to 5% of people who are living with cancer, specifically breast cancer, tend to participate in clinical trials, and that is a very small number. And so it's important for all of us, I believe, to consider clinical trials, as Katie said, at every step of the way. It's not a last resort. It's not a Hail Mary. It's not just at the very end. It's important to consider that with your team. Not that clinical trials are good for everybody, not that everybody is going to qualify for a clinical trial, but we would urge everyone to consider that possibility every step of the way. And so I just wanted to highlight that a little bit, because I'm grateful every day when I have taken medication in the past, somebody took the risk to allow a pharmaceutical company to see if that medication was safe in order for me to be able to take that medication, in order for everybody on this committee, on this call, to be able to be stable for years and be with their families and all of that. So it's important to remember and consider that. So we have a little bit more time in our discussion tonight, and a couple of people have mentioned what they are doing for survivingbreastcancer.org, but I wanted to open it up if there was anything we didn't talk about. I know Amy is chairing our subcommittee on social media. I don't know, Amy, if you want to talk a little bit more about what y'all are doing. Melanie mentioned that she's hosting the Facebook page this month. Survivingbreastcancer.org does have a Facebook group, and that is a mixed group of people with early stage and metastatic breast cancer. So that falls under our social media subcommittee. So Amy, did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so we have a panel that has early stage and late stage people, and what that does is it's allowing us to see what is important for early stage people, but also what's important for late stage. We're going through the data from everyone that's joined from the beginning of the onset of the Facebook page, and we're trying to clean up and we're trying to get people more engaged and more active. Our goal is to have a host going forward each month and to alternate from an early stage and a late stage. And then in October, for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we hope to have an early stage and late stage work together to bring awareness for breast cancer. It's just not all pink ribbons. But our goal is, if you're interested in participating in that, we'd love to have you join us. So we hope to roll that out and to have the Facebook page as a place where you can interact with us and we can learn more about you other than just your breast cancer diagnosis. We've discussed ideas on ways to share and engage the community. Right now, we're working through, like I said, going back through the data from 2017. I think we're up to the year 2021. We've made a lot of progress. We just started this at the beginning of the year. I want to give a shout out to Julie and Carol. They both are on our early stage leadership team, and they're doing a lot of work, and it's actually working very well. We're working together. We want to bridge the gap because the goal is we want, if someone is early stage and they do happen to have a diagnosis of late stage or stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, we don't want you to feel alone. We want you to have resources that some of us didn't feel like we had right at diagnosis. We also want to make sure that we are a community that embraces those that are diagnosed de novo, and we offer resources. The Facebook page is going to share all the events that Surviving Breast Cancer offers throughout the month to keep you engaged. There's yoga, there's writing, there's a book club. There's all these different activities to remind women living with, or men living with breast cancer, that you're more than just your diagnosis. We forget that oftentimes living metastatic. So we want to encourage everybody to embrace their well-rounded self and find a place where that they can recharge their batteries, but give back to themselves. A little bit of self-care through all the offerings from Surviving Breast Cancer.
Thank you, Amy. Some of these new initiatives are how we are helping to extend the reach of survivingbreastcancer.org. So just would put out there that that's just an example of something that we've been able to suggest, and we're open to other suggestions. So Sheila, did you want to share next?
Yes, so I get first connected with Surviving Breast Cancer when I was asked to participate in a podcast with the Spanish-speaking group, the Spanish-speaking arm of SBC, Después de un Diagnóstico. At the time, I had no idea how I got connected, but I actually figured it out once I attended September of last year, their leadership retreat. And Abigail, who I had already met and had partnered with, and many other advocacy, other types of efforts, had connected me to them. I am now part of, obviously, this MBC leadership group. And then I will be helping, a little bit with trying to plan for the upcoming webinars, but also with programming and other resources for the Spanish group, and technically anything else that comes to mind that I feel I can support. It was very, very refreshing for me to meet the SBC team and get to understand the amount of resources and all that's available and all everything else that was in dream stage and in the works. So I am very happy that I actually get to remain connected with the group, building those connections and just trying to put more things for the metastatic community. I actually recently attended for the first time one of the Thriver evenings, the group with the metastatic community about a week or so ago. And because of my work schedule, sometimes it's just not very easy to do the evenings, but looking forward to a lot more. And I'm really glad that I get to do this with some people that I had met in other steps of the advocacy journey too, and getting to know new people as well.
That's wonderful, Sheila. We had a comment on the live stream pointing out that the Hispanic community does need a lot of information. And Sheila, do you want to speak to that a little bit? Are there barriers to people in the Hispanic community being able to access good information?
Yes, and the barriers go far deeper than just the language barrier. I think part of it's just cultural, the way we're brought up. If I remember when I was living in the island in Puerto Rico, I remember you go to the doctor when you feel sick, they tell you what you have, they give you medication, you get the prescription, you don't question, you walk away, do as you're told. Sometimes you walk out and you didn't even know what is it that you had. You just know what medication you're taking afterwards. But I think in some cases, as the way we're brought up makes it more difficult for us to be vocal and just be the informed patient that asks questions and tries to understand what's going on, why, what options I have, and come to terms with the fact that the doctor doesn't get to make the decision. It is your decision. And that is not also something that's welcome by every medical professional, which is a clear sign you probably need to look for someone else. But it is something that I think, because of our upbringing, it could be perceived as you're disrespecting someone of authority. So I think part of it is just overcoming that. Of course, just getting access to specialists in your type of cancer. It's better for you if you have the ability to go to someone that specializes in breast cancer. Go there. But sometimes we don't even know that there's a distinction. But also realize that that's not an option in every single case, in every single place, which is why having information and having knowledge of things like what's your cancer subtype, what type of testing do you have a genetic mutation, then you're able to have those conversations and make sure that the treatment that you're being offered as an alternative is indeed something that matches what your clinical panorama is. Obviously, cost, it's another big thing, because treatments are expensive and you don't always know that there are many places where you can request support. It can be a grant that you can apply for. It could be organizations that provide funding for different types of expenses. It could be even the pharmaceutical company that makes the medication you're drinking. In my case, nobody told me that there was a copay program for Ibrance. And even though I have very good health insurance coverage through my employer's health insurance, I was still going to have a copay if it wasn't because the pharmaceutical person that contacted me said, hey, have you talked about, do you know about X program? And ended up being able to have that with a zero copay, which is not the case for everyone. I think that the challenges we face as a Hispanic community are very similar in many respects to what anyone faces, regardless of race. But I think a little bit of kind of like the upbringing actually plays a big role, and just availability of things in your own language, because it's not easy to understand, even if it's in your own language. But when you actually have things that are not in Spanish, it's even harder for you to try to maneuver around it.
Thank you for sharing that Sheila. I certainly don't always understand some of the cultural implications, the language implications, but I can say from my own personal experience that patients share a different level of information with each other than we're getting from any medical professional, regardless of intention, right? We don't want to say that the medical people treating us don't have good intentions, but they just look at things a little differently. And so patients share a very different set of information. It's the lived experience that's different.
And another thing that is really important, we are brought up not to talk about your problems with people. And it can be very isolating. And you may be able to talk to your friends about it, but they're not walking your shoes. So many times when I speak with other folks, whether it's as part of a mentoring relationship or just people that sometimes I get connected with, the fact that they're able to talk to someone else and see in me a reflection of something that, I mean, it brings hope to them, being able to talk freely, knowing there's no judgment, no question at all is out of bounds. That sometimes it's a little bit different because in our community, it's kind of more, you keep it to yourself, you deal with it on your own, and asking for help. Yeah, there's a little fine line there too. So it's a little bit more difficult, I would say, at times.
And why it's so important for organizations like SBC to offer those chances to connect. I just wanted to clarify. So Sheila was talking about the specific breakout rooms to metastatic breast cancer, which are the first and the third Thursdays of the month. Thursday Night Thrivers, which is that same meeting, does meet every single Thursday. We just meet separately on the first and the third Thursdays for people living with metastatic breast cancer. Amy, I think you wanted to share something else before we get to our last question.
Yes, so Sheila had mentioned, and I just wanted, because we've all talked about the different lines of treatment, and I just wanted to reiterate, I know we often talk about this, when treatment stops working, we don't fail the treatment fails us. And I just want to remind those watching and listening to remember that you didn't fail anything if you're going through progression. The treatment stopped working for you.
Thank you for that, Amy. That is some of that language that becomes really impactful. I can't tell you how many medical professionals I have talked to who said the patient failed a particular treatment line. And that's an enduring way of looking at things. So important to point that out. It's not your fault if a particular line of treatment stops working. So the last thing we do in each of our webinars is to have each of our panelists tell us a word that describes our discussion tonight. And typically what I do is call on Laura first, so that everyone else has a chance to think about their word. But I did just want to say that there is some live discussion going on right now, and there's a person who is asking about remedies for pain, especially the pain that's caused by the aromatase inhibitors or other medications like the aromatase inhibitors that lowers the levels of estrogen in our bodies. And Sheila had a great suggestion that acupuncture has been super helpful for her with her joint pain. And I will say I've had the same exact experience that acupuncture can be really, really helpful. The thing with acupuncture legitimately is that it is not often covered by insurance. And so if you're interested in some kind of therapy that's not what we might call traditional, checking with your team just to make sure that they are understanding of what you're wanting to do, but also can let you know if they feel like it is safe for you. It's so important that if you're being treated for cancer, that your medical oncologist and your medical team knows what you're doing. They may not always understand or agree if there's not, say, a clinical trial that demonstrates that something is going to be effective, although there is now several clinical trials, and we've gotten some papers that do demonstrate that acupuncture can be extremely helpful to reduce symptoms of medication. And then one of our other members, Amy, is suggesting that Claritin, oddly enough, can help with bone pain. And I'm sure we can get somebody on one of these webinars to talk about why. But those are just some ideas for pain relief. I can say from experience, when you're in pain, you will do just about anything to not be in pain anymore. So trying various things can be really helpful. Just make sure you tell your team what you're doing. All right, Laura, you are up, my friend. What word comes to mind when you think about this discussion tonight?
So much pressure because I always feel like I have so many words or phrases. First of all, thank you all for, I was kind of like backstage, if you will, just hearing your love and your passion for your advocacy work, not just with SBC, but with all of the organizations that you guys are involved in. I am so grateful for your leadership with survivingbreastcancer.org. So just thank you again for all that you do and what you bring to the table. And just hearing everyone's stories and the diversity of experiences that we're bringing, like, my heart is exploding right now. That is so many words. So my one word to sum this up is, I think, overwhelm. There is so much that we are doing. And I mean overwhelm in like the best, positive, most exciting way of like, oh, I finally found my community. There is something there for everybody. It's overwhelming, but I can find my place. And so thank you all for bringing that and making that part of our reality into fruition.
Thank you, Laura. All right, Amy, you are next to Laura in our Brady Bunch squares now, so you're up next.
Woohoo! Melanie can't steal my word. So I have two words actually. One is family, because I feel like this is family and I feel home. But inspired for all the work that SBC is doing for 2024. So inspired.
Thank you, Amy. Somebody always breaks the rules. It's usually Laura giving me phrases instead of words, but Amy broke the rules this time. All right, Katie, you're up. What word describes tonight?
My word is similar to Amy's, but community. And I feel like, we are really, represented the community that SBC is trying to build, not just within the metastatic space, but for all individuals impacted by breast cancer.
Thank you, Katie. We've got a synonym coming up for one of our viewers, unity. That's a great one as well. All right, Melanie, can't steal Amy's word again this time.
For the record, I did not steal her word. Great minds think alike. I just got called on first, so she couldn't use the word. Anyway, so I think one word that comes to mind is intimacy. And it's not in the sexual realm, but we are sharing an intimate part of our life, which is our cancer journey. And we're sharing that with each other. And I just feel like that's a certain closeness that, to me, intimacy describes it, but not in the sexual sense. That's kind of my word.
Thank you, Melanie. Appreciate that. All right, Sheila, what word would you use for tonight?
I will say empowered. I think every time we get together, I think we get like energy and we kind of feed off something that someone shares. And it could be the story, it could be information, it could be resources, could be understanding how big things are getting with SBC, understanding that you just have the power to take control and you control the narrative, you drive your story. And again, it's just feel like it gives people that power, that strength to just do the next best thing for you, because what's best for you may not be the best for someone else. But remember, you do you. You need to take care of yourself first.
Thank you, Sheila. What one phrase like that I really like is always be yourself, because you're the only one there is, right? Claudia, what word comes to mind for you?
Okay, thank you, Sheila, because that was exactly what I was going to say. But I had an alternate word just in case, and it's education. I think if for us, becoming educated in what our diagnosis is, where our choices are. I think that's extremely important. And surviving breast cancer can give us not only the basis to understand what our immediate diagnosis is, but also to educate us beyond that, beyond what we are living right now and how we're going to continue living. And I just want to say also that that's one of the things that I have in mind with the Latino community, that we need to become educated. So in order to just, for our voices to be heard, we need to become educated and to share our experiences.
Thank you for that, Claudia. That's a great word. So, Katie stole my word. So now that we're like everybody's stealing each other's words. So, but my word for tonight is together. So similar to community, but I have found since my diagnosis how much stronger we are together and how much more we can accomplish together. And so that is one thing that I love about our community, is like Melanie was saying, with the intimacy that we're willing to share the information that we need to share with each other. We're not going to find that in other places. So really appreciate all of you and your willingness to be here tonight, but also for your willingness to speak up for other people, and to help survivingbreastcancer.org do that as well. I have discovered in a lot of ways that being diagnosed with a really serious illness takes a lot. It takes our hair, it takes our fertility, it takes our energy, it can take our careers, it can take what we thought about in the future. It takes and takes and takes and takes. But doing things together to help our community has given me a different purpose. And so that is something that I think can be really impactful on quality of life. So I hope that you all will tune in our future MBC webinars. There will be another one this month all about living with metastatic breast cancer and how that impacts our relationships, whether you are in a romantic relationship or not, since it's February and we can't not talk about love and dating and all of those things. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a panel discussion later this month. In March, Amy will talk about scans. We're going to bring in a doctor to talk about some of the challenges in seeing, say, lobular breast cancer or inflammatory breast cancer, or really just interpreting scans. Hopefully, he'll also talk a little bit more about how some organizations are beginning to use AI to assist the doctors in reading images in order to get more accurate readings, and so much more. So we hope you will come back and join us for our every other Wednesday metastatic webinar series. And Laura, would you like to talk about anything SBC wise otherwise?
No, thank you. Again, being overwhelmed with all of the things, I would just encourage everyone to check out survivingbreastcancer.org/events. And that's where you can find all of our programs that are absolutely 100% free. In addition to the support groups that we mentioned tonight in our MBC specific webinar series, we offer for all stages and all subtypes, expressive writing, art therapy classes, yoga, meditation, breath work, etc. And so there is opportunities to get involved and find the complementary support in addition to everything that you guys are going through and living with on a day-to-day with your medical team. So yes, survivingbreastcancer.org/events. That's my little plug. Thank you. And we'll see you all. I think it's scheduled for February 28th. I would say loop year eve, if you will. And we will talk about love. So see you all there. Thank you for joining us tonight.